Welcome back to another Truck Talk, folks. I've said for a while, well, really since 2020, that the people who stole the election in 2020 are determined to never cede power to anyone. We all know that their mail-in ballot scheme was nothing but a way to make sure they could just have enough ballots to win. When over 100,000 show up at 2 o'clock in the morning at a polling place, every single one of them marked for a single candidate in a single race, no other race is marked, that's impossible. It just doesn't happen. But we're told we can't question it. Mary Floppins herself, Nina Jankovic, is on record now as saying that questioning the Disinformation Board is a threat to democracy. Aside from the fact that we are not a democracy, we are a constitutional representative republic, questioning tyrants is not a threat to freedom. But look at what they're pushing now. Monkeypox. 99% survival. I know people who got chickenpox real bad. They got a little scarring where they couldn't avoid scratching. They had to use a lot of calamine. But they went through a bad varicella infection. They're still here today. They're starting to say that monkeypox is a member of the smallpox family. And of course, that sounds a lot scarier than chickenpox. Mark my words, because they are already pushing the narrative. There is no treatment, there is no vaccine, and it spreads by water droplets. Well, somebody talks and water droplets that are too small to see are expelled from their mouth. I'm alone in my car, so no one's around to be hit by them. But you go to Walmart, you don't know who's there. They're going to use this to push another lockdown round. They're going to use this to push mail-in ballots. They're going to use this to demand that you simply obey. And they're going to continue doing it every 2 years. And ultimately what will happen is we will hear that 100% of all votes everywhere were for Democrats. And anyone who stands up and say, mine wasn't, so it's not 100%, they will be decried as Russian actors or spreading misinformation. You really did vote for Democrats, but you just want to spread hate and intolerance, so we're going to have to arrest you. There's been a push in this country toward an Orwellian tyranny for so long. People like Hillary, Joe, Kamala, Nancy, and many others read 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, and Animal Farm, and rather than being appalled and realizing those are societies we should never emulate, their reaction was, these are great ideas. We should do them all. And naturally, any pushback on it is, well, you're just an enemy of democracy. Democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on who's going to get lunch. We are not a democracy. We have a vote apparently happening on Monday on whether or not to completely cede our sovereignty to the World Health Organization. Spoiler warning, neither Congress or the President has the authority to supersede and just declare void our Constitution and declare that the World Health Organization is now the only governing board over our country. The moment that vote happens or anything happens to cede our sovereignty, everyone who took part in doing that needs to be arrested, charged with treason, tried before military tribunal, and if convicted, suffer the consequences. Will it happen? I don't know. But it should. I don't care who they are, Republican, Democrat, Independent, I don't care. If they are any part of saying, we have ceded our sovereignty, they should all be arrested. because the Constitution is the law of our country, the law of the land. And it does not have a clause that says, well, if the people running the country decide we just want to hand over sovereignty, they can. No, it doesn't work that way. They believe the military will just knuckle under and follow orders. An unjust law is no law at all. And the military of our country, they swear to the Constitution. Yes, part of their oath is to obey the laws or the orders of their superior officers and those appointed over them. But if that order contradicts or violates the Constitution in any way, they're not supposed to follow it. I've asked a lot of cops because they swear an oath to serve and protect. I've asked a lot of people in the military. I've asked a lot of veterans. If you're ordered to subjugate the people of this country, what would you do? To a person, the cops all say the badge will come off. To a person, the veterans all say, well, remember Lexington and Concord. And unfortunately, not to a person, but well over 98% of the active people say, my oath will have been declared void and I will stand with the people. The others weren't sure. None said they would obey orders. For anyone who might see this that says, I will obey orders, remember the Nuremberg trials. And remember that I was just following orders, not a valid defense. If you think that you can box people up into railroad cars, ship them off to concentration camps, take part in the destruction of everything this country stands for, and then say, I was just following orders. There's historical precedent that says you are as guilty as those who gave the orders. And just one final bit of advice for any of the tyrants who may one day see this. The Geneva Conventions do not apply to civilians. The Geneva Conventions apply to uniformed armies in time of war. Our current enemy, global terrorists, cells taking orders from people like al-Baghdadi or Soleimani. They dress as civilians. They hide in civilian homes. They use women and children as shields. They are not a uniformed army, and it is not a declared war against any country or countries. Geneva does not apply. I'm not saying this to say we should be inhumane. I'm not saying this to say we should indiscriminately bomb and kill. But I'm saying this to say, remember that Geneva applies to uniformed armies in time of war. And those of us who are not in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, we know this. And if faced with a situation where we must defend ourselves or die, this we will defend.